I was the last one to see it before it vanished into the trees, and I still don't know if it was human. I just know it was staring right at us, and it never blinked once. It was one of those perfect summer nights. Warm air, clear sky, and the kind of silence that feels peaceful, not eerie. My wife and I had just finished putting our 2 kids to bed and decided to sit out by the fire pit in our backyard. We live in a quiet wooded area just outside a small town, plenty of space between houses, and even more space behind our property, where thick woods stretch for miles. The fire crackled softly, and we sipped wine while the soft hum of insects filled the air. It was the kind of night that made you feel far away from the world. Safe, quiet, still, until we heard the rustling. It wasn't loud at first, just a shuffle of leaves, or maybe a branch cracking. My wife paused, cocked her head. I brushed it off. Probably a raccoon or a deer. We get them all the time out here. But then it happened again. Louder this time. Closer. This wasn't the kind of movement you'd expect from a small animal. It was heavier, slow, deliberate, like someone trying not to be heard, but failing. I stood up and turned toward the tree line. The fire cast a soft orange glow across the yard, but the trees beyond were completely black. I squinted, trying to make out anything between the trunks, but all I saw was shadow. Probably just a deer, I said again, though my voice sounded less sure this time. My wife didn't respond. She was staring too. Then we saw it, not moving, not making a sound, just standing. A figure, human-shaped, right at the edge of the woods. It was hard to make out details in the darkness, but what was clear, impossibly clear, was that it was facing us. Watching, motionless. I remember feeling this bizarre wave of disbelief. Like maybe it was a weird-shaped tree, or my eyes were playing tricks on me. But then the fire crackled again, and in that flicker of light, the figure's shape shifted ever so slightly, like it had leaned just a bit forward. That's when I knew it was real. Someone was standing in our backyard, just watching us from the dark. "Hey," I called out, trying to sound firm. "Can I help you?" No response, no movement. My wife stood slowly, stepping closer to me. I could feel the tension in her body, the way she instinctively reached for my arm. I took a few steps toward the figure. Not too far, just to the edge of the light. "You're on private property," I said, louder. "I'm calling the police." Still nothing. I pulled out my phone, but before I could dial, the figure took a step back. Not fast, just one deliberate step into the trees, then another. And then it was gone. I ran inside to grab a flashlight and my old baseball bat. My wife was already on the phone with the police, her voice shaking. I scanned the woods, shining the beam back and forth. Nothing. Just blackness and leaves swaying gently in the breeze. The cops showed up about 20 minutes later. They did a walk around the perimeter, checked the woods a bit, but didn't find anything. No footprints, no signs of a break-in. They said it was probably a trespasser, maybe someone lost or drunk. But I know what I saw. That person thing wasn't lost. They weren't drunk. They were watching us. And they stood there far too still to be anything normal. We didn't sleep much that night. I kept looking out the back window, expecting to see those eyes again, but nothing came. The next morning, I went out in the daylight to where the figure had stood. I thought maybe I'd find prints or something disturbed, but there was nothing. Just the usual layer of dry leaves and sticks, untouched. Later that week, our neighbor who lives about half a mile down the road mentioned something strange. He said his motion lights kept going off in the middle of the night, but when he checked, there was never anyone there. His dog had been barking at the woods too, which he said never happens. We haven't seen the figure again, not directly, but every now and then, late at night, I'll hear that rustling. The same slow shuffle of leaves at the edge of the woods. and I've never sat by that fire again. I knew I was alone on the porch that night, so when I heard my name whispered from the woods, I froze. It sounded exactly like my voice. It was late July, around 11:30 p.m., and I was sitting on the back porch of my parents' lake house, about 3 hours outside the city. They had gone to bed early, and I stayed up scrolling on my phone and enjoying the breeze. It was warm, but not sticky, and the soft rustling of leaves in the trees made it feel even more peaceful. The lake sat just beyond a small stretch of woods behind the house, about 50 feet of tall, spindly trees before it opened up to the water. I was used to the quiet. No cars, no neighbors, just nature. But something about that night felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. The wind seemed to come and go in strange bursts, and there was this weird feeling in my chest like static, or pressure building in the air before a storm. But the sky was clear. I had just put my phone down to stretch when I heard it. A whisper. From the woods. At first I thought I imagined it. It was faint, barely above the wind. But I was sure I heard it again, a few seconds later, closer this time. My name. Whispered. Quiet. Deliberate. And not from the house. I stood up quickly and turned toward the trees, squinting. There was nothing. Just swaying branches and the sound of the breeze picking up again. I went inside, locked the back door, and checked on my parents. They were both sound asleep. I almost convinced myself it had been the wind, or maybe an animal. But when I went back to the porch, more curious than brave, I stood quietly and listened. And then I heard it again. This time, it was unmistakable. My name, whispered slowly from the edge of the woods. But now it sounded strange, like my own voice. The same cadence. The same breathiness I'd use if I were whispering. I felt my stomach drop. I backed up toward the door, heart racing. I didn't take my eyes off the trees. That's when I noticed something else. There were no bugs, no crickets, just silence and the whispering wind. And one more whisper. Right before I slammed the door shut. It said, "Come back." It didn't happen again after that. At least, not while I was there. But I haven't gone back to that house in the summer since. And sometimes, when I'm outside at night, even back home in the city, I swear I hear the breeze say my name just barely, under the wind. And it always sounds just like me. I didn't see who or what was outside my tent that night, but I heard them breathing, and they stayed there for hours. I went on a solo camping trip last summer to unplug from everything. No phone, no laptop, just me, the woods, and silence. I picked a spot I'd camped at before, deep in a national forest, far from any marked trails. It wasn't an official site, but I liked it that way. Peaceful, secluded, no people. The day went exactly as planned. I hiked, made a small fire, ate dinner, and watched the stars until I started nodding off. Around 10:30 p.m., I crawled into my tent and zipped it shut. I always sleep light when I'm alone in the woods, but the night was still and calm. No wind, no animals rustling, not even crickets. Just dead quiet. I drifted off fast. I don't know what time it was when I woke up, but the fire outside had burned out and the air had gone cold. What woke me wasn't a sound. It was a feeling like something was wrong. Off. My eyes snapped open, and I laid there completely still. Then I heard it. Footsteps, not walking, shifting, slow, heavy. Someone or something was circling my tent. I held my breath. My heart was pounding so loud, I thought whoever was outside would hear it. The footsteps were deliberate. Not a curious raccoon or a bear nosing around. These were bipedal, measured. They stopped right outside my tent, inches away from my head, and then breathing, Shallow, rhythmic, human. I didn't move. I didn't dare. I didn't have a weapon close. My knife was in my backpack, zipped up on the other side of the tent. My flashlight was under my jacket. Every second felt like a trap. The breathing stayed steady. I thought about calling out, saying something to scare them off, but I couldn't make myself speak. I kept imagining someone crouched right there, listening, grinning. It stayed like that for at least an hour, maybe two. No footsteps, no movement, just breathing. At some point, I must have blacked out from exhaustion or fear. When I woke up, the sun was rising. I shot upright and unzipped the tent in one motion, ready for, I don't even know what. But there was no one, nothing, no footprints, no broken branches, no sign of anyone having been there. I packed everything and left within 10 minutes. I haven't been camping since. Because the thing that keeps me up now, what I can explain, is how my tent was zipped back up from the outside. I always close it from the inside. Always. I've told myself maybe I forgot. Maybe I left it that way and didn't realize. But I know I didn't. That night never really left me. Even now, almost a year later, I still think about it more than I should. Sometimes I wonder if it was just a person, someone messing with me. But that makes it worse, in a way. Because if it was just some random person, why didn't they say anything? Why didn't they run when they realized I was awake? And why did they stay there, breathing, for hours? I talked to a ranger friend about it once, without telling him everything. I just said I'd heard something outside my tent, and asked if there were any reports of weird activity in that area. He laughed and said probably just a deer, or maybe a black bear checking out the smell of food. But then he paused and asked me exactly where I'd been. When I told him, he got really quiet. He said something about an old hermit who used to live out there decades ago, but that guy died years back. Still, campers had reported hearing things, footsteps, breathing, voices in the woods, but nothing ever came of it. He called it folklore. I tried to laugh it off, but it didn't help. That place doesn't feel like folklore to me. It feels real. Too real. There's one more thing I've never told anyone. Not even my girlfriend. A few weeks after the trip, I started hearing something at night. At first, it was just a creak in the floorboards of my apartment, or the feeling of being watched when I brushed my teeth. Then, one night around 2 a.m., I woke up to a sound I hadn't heard since the woods. Breathing, right outside my bedroom window. My window is on the second floor. I didn't move. I didn't look. I stayed under the blanket, eyes wide open, listening to that slow, steady rhythm, just on the other side of the glass. When I finally looked, when I couldn't take it anymore, there was nothing there. But the window was unlocked. I always lock it. I haven't heard the breathing again since that night. But I've started keeping a knife on the knit stand, and I double-check the windows. Every single night, people think being out in nature is peaceful, and most of the time, it is. But every now and then, you find a place where the silence feels too heavy, where the dark feels watched, where something out there is waiting, just beyond the firelight. And sometimes, it follows you home.